Welcome to our town meeting talk show for Friday, August 28th. Very nice to have you with us. I'm J.R. Lewis on KLAM, and we get to put COVID aside for this show and talk about another important topic, the Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska organization. Gay Wellman is our guest, a registered nurse. She's the education specialist, is going to give us a wealth of information not only about Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia and how to cope, but also many, many assets available through Alzheimer's Resource that ironically, as a result of the challenging pandemic, are actually more accessible. All of these different tools and seminars and conversations that they have, because so much of their operation has had to move online, which again, and you go to alzalaska.org, which is the site, alzalaska.org, there is a great deal of information you can access and webinars and online presentations that you can put on your calendar if you want to learn more about this condition. If you've got someone in your family that you need to be able to care for, and if you are a caregiver, if you need to be able to learn how to care for yourself, take care of yourself while you're facing these challenging times. Gay is a fascinating guest. She, despite how difficult a subject it is, she manages to stay chipper, which I have a great deal of respect for. And you're going to hear what she has to say. This show, of course, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. They are your local cell phone and wireless data provider with lots of neat, shiny toys and the network to keep them all connected and keep you online. So big thanks to Cordova Wireless for bringing us the show, and we hope you'll enjoy my conversation with Gay Wellman, education specialist with Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska, on today's edition of the Town Meeting Talk Show. Gay Wellman, nice to have you back. It's been quite a while since we had an opportunity to visit. So let's start, for the purposes of anybody who's not familiar with you, just introduce yourself to folks. What is your background?
Okay. Well, hey, it really is good to be back with you guys. I loved it when I was able to come over to Cordova, and it's one of the sad pieces that I had to go to part-time, and the agency decided that it didn't make a whole lot of sense for me to be traveling from Kenny Lake to Cordova. It meant a roundabout kind of thing. I had to go into Anchorage and then come over on the plane from Anchorage. Anyway, so I just missed being over there with you guys. It was a wonderful time when I was able to do that.
Well, we are a wonderful community, of course, and I can't argue with you there. So let's get to know you a little better.
Okay, great. My name's Gay Wellman, and I've been in Alaska since 1978. I worked for a while with substance abuse, inpatient substance abuse program. Then I went into mental health, and then I transferred over when my husband and I moved out to Kenny Lake. I got a job with the Native Corporation, the Copper River Native Association, and worked with them with family support, family issues, and primarily got into a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder kind of things. Did a lot with families around that, did a lot of education with that. And then when that job kind of wound down, I was really fortunate to get a job with the Alzheimer's Resource Agency of Alaska. First working with them they had a in-home program where we helped families find workers, and we provided training and we provided support for the workers that were working in the home. And I was doing that when I came over to Cordova. I did that part-time, and then I was also hired by the education department. And so it was a kind of a combination job that I had, and it was wonderful. Then when I went part-time, the agency actually had to drop the in-home program where we were helping folks with in-home workers, primarily because of the new government regulations that required that. All agencies that were doing in-home work, education, and care coordination had to make a choice between care coordination and in-home work. And our agency decided that it fit with our mandate, with our what we're trying to do, better for us to have the care coordination and the education. So we had to turn over the in-home program to other agencies. Mm-hmm. And we acquired the agencies that were supplying in-home, not in-home, but for care coordination for all of the types of waivers, Medicaid waivers, so that we are now providing across the state in-home and care coordination for folks, not just with dementia. We're not just caring for someone with dementia, but caring for anybody, young and old, for whatever reason. We have those folks on our rolls now, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I don't have much to do with that side of the program or that department, but it does mean that our education department sometimes gets folks coming to our program who are caring for people that aren't just caring for folks with dementia. So that's our primary focus. And of course, with the background that I have, I find that pretty much anything that's affecting the brain, okay, whether it's a disease process, whether it's a traumatic brain injury, whether it's prenatal exposure to alcohol, whether it's exposure to alcohol, if you drink too much, you're going to change your brain.
Sure. Anything that's changing the brain, it pretty much the same approaches what you're going to end up having to do with folks to help them and to stay connected is pretty much the same. So it's been an easy transition for me to move through these various different, I guess you'd call it, types of services or whatever. Sure.
Mental health, it doesn't really matter. It's the same kind of thing. When somebody's not acting the way we expect them to act for whatever reason, the approaches that we use are to deal with challenging behaviors. It's pretty much the same.
It's interesting, to hear you mention that you've been involved in so many different areas of in this field. Is dealing with Alzheimer's specifically, has that been particularly, you hate to say fascinating, in like a woohoo kind of way, because obviously it's not that kind of a thing, but you know what I mean? I mean, how does work in the area of Alzheimer's resource compare to some of the other areas that you've specialized?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that there's really not that much difference. The cause, maybe, what's causing the person's brain to function differently. And, a lot of us are beginning to try to get away from thinking of it as a disease. I was just reading a really fascinating book recently about divergent minds that is looking at autism and looking at some of the other things that we think of as diseases, and even dementia, and I hope people get it that dementia is the overall umbrella term that we use when we're talking about I'm going to say the disease process. A function that's going on, the brain is changing because there's something going on in the brain that's causing it to be functioning differently, and Alzheimer's is one of those. There's multiple reasons why a person may have the various different symptoms that we think of when we think of dementia. What's going on with their brain, their cognitive abilities, their abilities to think. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that in a minute.
Sure, sure.
That's the overall term. So, yes, our agency is called Alzheimer's Resource, but we do not deal just with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is just one of many. And there's Lewy body, there's frontotemporal, there's vascular, which is anything that's causing strokes, that sort of thing.
Sure.
There's anything like that causes the medication. There can be things that are reversible. So if you have somebody who looks like they have some form of dementia, you're going to want to be sure that you get a really good medical assessment before you make any assumptions.
Okay. Well, and we'll get into some of that because, of an obvious, very frequent question, particularly for people who are aging, are these memory issues, are they Alzheimer's or are they something else? But before we get to that, How about a little background on Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska? I see it's been in existence since about 1984. Tell us some more about the agency.
Okay, great. It's a fascinating story, actually. It's a wonderful story because what it is that we're back in the early 80s, and earlier than that, there were two sisters that took care of their mother who had Alzheimer's. She had Alzheimer's, and they had a horrible time because they could not find help. They couldn't find any information. There was very little out there. We didn't have the internet like we have now. There was very, very little research being done, and certainly if the research was all focused on causes and trying to come up with anything, and most of the approach was, oh my goodness, it's the end of your life. You get dementia, it's the long goodbye, and some of the earlier books that you can find about it are it's a long goodbye, how awful it is, and everything, and they didn't want to go that way, and so they struggled with their mom. They learned a lot trying to keep her happy at home, keep her contented at home, and then when she passed away, they decided that they wanted to start an agency that helped families with education. And so they pulled it together, and a lot of those people are still involved in the agency. The board is an incredible board. It's a wonderful agency to work for because the focus is always on services. Yes, we'll help people with figuring out what's going on, but what do you need to know? What education do you need to help you manage the day-to-day challenges that you're going to face when you have someone with a progressive dementia? And that what are some of the changes you're looking at? What are some of the things that you can do? What are the approaches that are going to work, and what are the approaches that are not going to work? So that's the focus that they took, and over the years they've developed a really program, a agency that has a really good reputation. At one point, another interesting piece on this is before I joined the agency, before I got hired by them, they had tried to go with the Alzheimer's, the national organization, okay? Mm-hmm. And they found that they were associated with them. They found that the focus was so much on research that it kind of was away from where they wanted to go. And so they disassociated themselves with it. It doesn't mean that part isn't really, really important, but we wanted to put our energy into this business of really helping families understand what they were dealing with and providing them up with as much services as possible, as much support as possible.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting story because our Cordova Family Resource Center was created very much the same way in terms of its focus on domestic violence and sexual assault. It was a grassroots type program. There was one mom in particular, I think, that had a daughter that had experienced some of this and said the same thing. There aren't any local assets to deal with this. We need to start something. And this was back in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, I think. And, it's been a thriving organization ever since. So it's amazing what Alaskans can do when they decide something needs to get done, isn't it?
It's wonderful. It's a real true Alaskan story. I'm sure there's other parts of the country that do the same thing. But, boy, I'll tell you, any other place that I go, I have folks that join our webinars from the outside of Alaska. Especially now that we're doing it online, which is basically what I've been doing for the last almost 10 years. I've been doing in-person, online webinars that people can join from wherever they are. And now with Zoom, we're really going to town with those kinds of programs.
Well, and we're going to be talking about some of those in a little while and how people can join them. But let's get back to the basics here now. Again, it's been quite a while since you and I have been able to visit about this disease. There have been a couple prominent cases of it in Cordova over the last few years, at least that I know of, two individuals that I knew that were eventually taken from us as a result of it. So let's get back to that sort of basic question that any of us probably wonder as we age. When does memory loss become more than just memory loss.
Exactly. There is something called normal memory loss, all right? And the thing you want to remember is that with dementia, it's more than just memory loss. In other words, what they say is that you need to have more than just that you're having trouble with your memory for it to be a true dementia. It doesn't mean, like my mother-in-law, actually, she didn't have dementia in the sense of Alzheimer's or some of those other disease processes, but she lost her short-term memory completely. She remembered who we were. She remembered her past. She was her personality didn't change, all that sort of thing. And I think if given the opportunity, her judgment wasn't really affected. But there's a whole group of things that have to be in place so that what you're wanting to do, if you have concerns, and usually it's the memory thing that we recognize first off. We don't really associate dementia with personality changes. Oh, he's just getting grumpy, or oh, mom is just getting less interested in some of her stuff. What the heck? She's getting old. She's got arthritis. And we can make lots of excuses for some of those things. And also, there's the fact that as we get older, just as with the rest of our body, our brain does shrink. I just found out last year sometime I had a brain scan done for another reason, and it came back with all these tiny little black areas. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And the doctor said, don't worry about it. That's normal. It's normal. These tiny little blood vessels, teeny tiny little places where we're getting old and kind of busting like an old a tire or something,
Yeah.
And so he said, don't worry about it. But that's why those of us as we get older do this thing of you go into the kitchen and now why am I here? What am I here for? And you have to go back. If you're like me, you go back to where you came from and oh yes, that's what I wanted. And you have to keep it in mind. You have to keep it present to get back to the kitchen and find what you're looking for. That's why we lose our keys. That's why we, and that can happen even for younger people if you've got a lot going on in your life.
Okay, so that's not indicative, though, necessarily of this disease taking shape.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It may be something, and again, if other people are telling you, kind of wondering what's going on for you, or if you notice other things going on, it's a good idea to get a screening done. We really encourage people to get screenings.
All right, so what would be some of the main warning signs that might leap out that the need for a screening is more imminent?
Okay, I'm going to read off to you from, there's one of the screening tools that we use is called the AD8, and what it's doing is it's looking at the 8 major areas that we think of when you think of cognitive abilities, the things that our brain does for us. Okay, first one is problems with judgment, and what you're looking for is change. In other words, if your loved one has always had trouble making decisions, you're not a big deal. But if it's getting worse, then yes. Okay. So again, change. Okay. Has there been change in the last several years that caused by cognitive thinking and memory problems? Okay. So problems with judgment, things like making decisions, bad financial decisions, problems with thinking in general. Not quite catching things that are going on around them, whatever. So again, about change. Another one is less interest in hobbies and activities. So if you've got somebody who is, they used to love to go to sew, or they like to go to book clubs, or they like to play golf, or whatever it was, and they're just showing that I don't really want to do this anymore. And again, you have to look at, is it because they're going deaf? Is it because they're having trouble with their eyes? Are they getting where they aren't able, their hands aren't working as well because they've got arthritis? So that's something different. So that's one reason why you have to look at what else is going on, not just the brain. But if all those things get checked out, okay. So that would be a yes, there's a change, or no, there's no change, or you don't know. The next one is this one, and you'll hear this a lot. Repeats things, same things over and over. Not saying, when are we going to the store? I know we were supposed to go to the store. Is it today? And asking over and over the same story, so the same statement. Okay, if a person begins to do that again, change. Like my dad, he'd tell the same stories over and over again. He didn't have dementia. He just liked to tell those stories.
Yeah.
He had a certain repertoire, and that was it. But I don't know if any of you have been around somebody who, like with my mother-in-law, and this was about her memory. We'd talk to her on the phone, and we would tell her about our dog, and then a couple minutes later, she would say, "Do you have a dog?" Or she would not. She'd make some comment that indicated she hadn't remembered that we just talked about it. So those kinds of questions, those kind of stories, statements. Okay, so that's the third one. The fourth one is trouble learning how to use a tool, an appliance, or a gadget, like learning how to use the remote control, learning how to use the computer. And again, those of us that are getting older, we are not used to it.
Yeah.
We can do it. It takes longer. And that's different. What we're talking about is somebody who just can't learn the new thing. There's a coffee maker. You get them a new coffee maker, and it's like no way are they going to use that new coffee maker. They just can't do it. My sister's just in the beginning stages of some form of dementia. We don't know what kind yet. She is no longer able to manage the VCR controls. She used to, but she can't now.
Okay, well, and you raise a good point there that's important to remember is it's not, I mean, there's some people who never take to technology sort of regardless of their age, but it's change over time.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. So that, like with my sister, she used to be able to do it. She had a little simple device to control her TV. She knew exactly where she wanted to go. She can't do it anymore.
Okay.
And as far as like her problems with judgment, I'll use her as an example. She used to be very meticulous about keeping her financial records. She was very frugal, and she knew exactly what was happening with her money at all times. She kept very detailed records. She kept everything like that. When I finally became aware, she lived down in North Carolina, when it finally got kind of my attention that she was having trouble, she had over $3,000 worth of debt on her credit card. She would never have done that. Ever, ever, ever. And she was only paying the minimum.
Yeah.
She was paying $100 in interest on her credit card by the time we found out what was going on.
Yeah.
And she would forget. She wouldn't pay her bills. So it's things like that that change. Okay. So, all right. So trouble learning how to use new things. Forget the correct month or year. And again, hey, if you're not working, you've retired, well, you don't need to know what day it is. You know, some of these tests, they'll say, what day is it? Well, I don't know. You know, but you need to recognize what month it is and what year it is. Sometimes they'll have you saying who the president is. You know, do they watch the news? Are they interested in the news? But again, it's changed. Is that something different? For some of us, remembering people's names. I've always had a trouble with names. Okay, so I'm not particularly worried that I'm having even a little bit more trouble. Okay. Now, if it gets to the point where I don't remember my husband's name, that's something different.
Sure, that's a change. Yeah.
And even our children, sometimes you'll go through John, Ann, Tricia, and get out of the dog before you remember again.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
That's different. Okay. All right. Trouble handling complicated financial affairs, like doing their taxes, paying bills. Again, is this something they used to do? Or is it something that now they're not, like I said with my sister? Trouble remembering appointments. Again, we all, as we get older, if I didn't have my iPad or my iPhone with me and have written it down somewhere, I'm going to forget appointments. I do it pretty frequently, actually.
Yeah.
Unless I remember to look at my calendar, I have to write it down. That's different. That's normal. All right. That's normal memory loss type stuff as we get older. But if I get to the point where I've written something down, I don't even remember what in the heck that is, or I don't remember to look for it, or I just don't remember that this is something I needed to do. Okay. And you know, if it begins to get more, it's about the extent of it. And if you look at something that you've written down and you don't even know that what it is you're talking about, that's something that's a change. And then daily problems with thinking and or memory, just in general. People sometimes, there's another list that we could go over here. When does forgetting become a disease? You know, do you need to remember to do things? Reminders to do things. Do you forget appointments? Do you get lost easily? That's another one that we didn't cover in this other one.
Yeah.
AB8 doesn't get. That's another one. I don't know how many of you either read the book Still Alice or watched the movie. They did a really nice job with the movie. And for her, she in the book, it's a fictional story, but it's very well done, and it certainly brings up a lot of the issues that families are going to have to face.
What was the name of it again?
Still Alice.
Still Alice. Okay.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. It's very well done. The movie is great. The book is even better, of course.
Yeah.
But for her, she was a professor at Harvard, and she got lost getting home, walking. And she realized this is not right. Something's happening. And so she recognized that she's the one that went to the doctor, went and got checked out and found out that she had dementia. And it was her family that said, no, that's not happening. You're okay. You know, they are the ones that were in denial, but she's the one. And that can sometimes happen. They say is that about 50% of the people that develop a dementia are going to be aware of it and are going to want to talk about it, and you're going to want to talk with them about it, because they'll be your best help in knowing how to help them. They'll be able to tell you what works and what doesn't. Okay. And that's who we learned from mostly, as those of us that are the education specialists, so to speak. Yeah. We've learned from those folks who are willing to talk about what it's like to go through this process.
Well, you've covered a lot of different types of warning signs, emphasizing each time that it's a change over time to be focused on when considering whether maybe or not to be assessed. Now, there's another question, of course, that comes up a lot is there anything a person can do to prevent Alzheimer's or other dementias or mitigate the symptoms? So what kind of interventions are available there?
What they're saying right now is that there really isn't any way. We do not have any cures. So prevention is not really what you're looking at, but you hit it on the head when you said mitigate. Because what they found is that if you have a healthy brain, if you have higher education, the more education you have, and you've got more money, it seems to be that, by more money, you've been taking care of yourself better. Unfortunately, folks who are poor tend to have poor health care. But if you've been healthy, if you've taken care of your body, your brain is going to be in better shape to deal with any disease process or anything that comes along that may be causing you to have challenges. There's a really old study that was done by I don't know exactly what year it was in, but they did a study with a bunch of nuns, and they call it the nun study, believe it or not. And what they did is the nuns donated their brains. They'd lived a healthy life. They'd had done service. They'd been involved in the community. They'd eaten well. They'd had plenty of rest. They had a spiritual life. They, all these good things that they'd done for themselves. They had exercise. They all these things that they did. What's good for the heart, good for the brain is basically what we say. What's good, exercise, maintaining a healthy diet, keeping your brain active, socializing, reducing stress and anxiety, stop smoking, avoid drinking alcohol to excess, control blood pressure, control cholesterol, control diabetes, all those things that we hear so much about, healthy lifestyle. Those are things that are going to help you have a healthy brain. And if you have a healthy brain and then you get some kind of disease process in there, you're going to have enough extra cells out there that pathways and things that you may not notice the effects. You may not have as severe of the symptoms, as someone else for a longer period of time. Now, eventually, if you have a disease like Alzheimer's or Lewy body or Parkinson's, which can also have, at some point, some of people with Parkinson's develop a component of it that's a dementia. Not everybody with Parkinson's will develop dementia, but some of them do. And it all depends on what's going on in the brain.
Sure.
But you can delay the symptoms that are debilitating. At some point, folks with dementia are, if nothing else kills them, dementia will kill you. So again, whether it's an Alzheimer's, a type of a disease process like Alzheimer's or Lewy body or one of those others, it's an actual, the cells are being changed, right?
Sure.
Okay.
But I'm hearing you say that it's possible even with it that if you've done enough to take care of yourself along the way that you may, if I heard you right, that you may basically outlive it. You know, that it might not be the thing that closes the book. If your body is strong enough and your brain is strong enough to sustain you through that.
Yeah, a lot of times folks with dementia, their bodies are fine.
Yeah.
They can be really strong, but for whatever reason, the disease process will keep going. It's kind of like, I like to use the analogy of a healthy forest. If you have a healthy forest and there's a fire, not necessarily the kind of fire that's down in California right now, because that's a real big one. But if you have a little fire that goes through, I can still get to Grandma's house because I have more than one way to get there. Okay.
Yeah.
But if my forest is kind of weak, or is disease has other kinds of things going on, I haven't reforested, and that's where they bring in this thing about brain exercises.
Mm-hmm.
If you're exercising your brain, you're challenging it with learning new things. You're trying to learn new ways of doing things. It's not just doing crossword puzzles over and over and over and over again, but try something new. Learn a new language. Put your clothes on different. Practice a new language. Whatever. Just trying new things. Getting out there and socializing. Being around people. Volunteering. All those things are going to be helping you keep your brain active. The work I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I weren't doing this, I'd probably be in far worse shape. Okay.
It's interesting. Some of the things you suggested out, right there, though, are, the socializing, getting together with people. Obviously, we're in a period right now where that is particularly challenging, which makes me wonder, what has it been like for you trying to deliver services in the middle of a pandemic?
It's a big challenge, and actually our agency we're really quite concerned about what's going to be happening this winter. In summertime here in Alaska, people can get outside. We're able, even if you're in Anchorage, you can get out and walk around. You can get into nature. And being outdoors is critical when you have someone with dementia. A lot of times people don't want to go out. But what you get to do as a family member is figure out how to work with someone, how to be with someone, how to encourage them. And that's a whole other topic that I don't know that we're going to have time to talk about today. No. But it's really important to learn how to be with someone who has dementia. There's one of the presentations that we do is called Being a Friend. And how that's one of the things that will happen. And you brought up a really good point. This whole issue of this pandemic, where we are physically so isolating from each other, it's making the job of the challenges for family members tenfold or worse.
Because, of course, a lot of the people most likely to be suffering are among the most vulnerable population physically to what this virus can do to you. So there's not only the caring for the person, but then the family members needing to be extremely cautious what they do when they're not at home, if they're going out to work or something, to be sure that they don't bring it home with them.
Exactly. And one of the things and the challenge is that if you've got somebody with dementia, unless you've got somebody else living with you, you can't leave a person who is in the middle of late stages of dementia. You can't leave them alone.
Yeah.
They cannot be left alone. It's not safe. And
Do the conversations that occur virtually, when you talk about socializing, can you get as much benefit, or is it too early to tell, as much benefit from, visiting with people on Zoom as you do when it's face-to-face?
It's not as good, but I'll tell you what, with my sister, just as an example, I was just doing it on the phone, and I was getting, I couldn't tell whether she was responding or not because she doesn't talk anymore very much.
Right.
She'll answer yes, no. She'll say, I'm fine. She says, she'll say simple things, but she's not talking like she used to. And I can't have a conversation with her. So I couldn't see her.
Yeah.
Zoom has made all the difference in the world to me. I don't know if it's making all that much difference to her, but it certainly is for me as the caregiver, a long-distance caregiver, because I can see her responding. I can talk with her. I can show her pictures. I can see her smiling. So I know she's engaging. Okay.
Well, let's move on if we could. Again, for anybody joining us midway here, Gay Wellman, who is an RN, education specialist with the Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska folks, and we've been going over some of the background on what the disease is and what Alzheimer's Resource is as an agency. A reminder, by the way, that anybody who missed the first part and would like to be able to hear it, the show will go up on the YouTube channel like all of our talk shows, youtube.com/Cordova TV. Let's turn a corner here now and talk about some of the things that you have. You've got quite a list of things, most of them virtual, of course, these days, but for people who want to learn more, who want to be able to interact with the agency, what are some of these things on your schedule?
Okay, we've got, oh my goodness, you can choose all kinds of things, and that's one of the things that's happened with this virus or with this pandemic is that our agency had to have all of our education specialists had to learn how to use Zoom, and so they're all learning how to provide the same classes, the same webinars that they were doing in person. I was the only one doing the ones for families. And so I would do it like once a month. And so it wasn't that much, once a month I would present something on like the GEMS. That's Tipa Snow is one of the best trainers you can get. And she's developed this whole way of looking at the different stages that the person with dementia does and what the changes are and what the best approaches are. And she's wonderful. You can get her on YouTube, by the way. That's the other advantage is that not only are we presenting things by Zoom, everybody else, so you can see people like Tipa, who is, you'd have to pay a lot of money to see her now. You can see her on YouTube whenever you want. All you have to do is Google Tipa, T-E-E-P-A, Snow, and you can get all kinds of education. Now, we're doing a lot of the same kind of things. So if you want the Alaskan version of these things, you want to come to us, right? Okay. So Dating Without a Battle is one of them. I'll be doing Healthy Body, Healthy Brain, talking about some of this prevention or some of this stuff that you can do, things you can do, going even more difficult. I'll be doing that on the September 12th to Saturday. There's dining and dementia, Medicaid waivers, people trying to get on Medicaid is a big issue, and so that's another one. The overview of dementia, care for the caregiver, assisted living, if, when, and how, wandering and dementia, fall prevention. We've got a whole list of things, and there'll be another whole new one coming out for the next quarter. What we have put up right now is we're heading into September, and that's the last month of our first quarter of fiscal year 21.
Right.
So that's what you're going to find on our webpage. I would encourage everybody who's interested. We have these classes and events around the state listed. The other thing, besides just the webinars, that's one thing we're doing. But what's really great is that they're offering, our education specialists are offering something called a memory cafe, which is a kind of fun things to do. And so if you've got someone, you're living at home, you've got somebody with dementia, or you just want to see what we're doing with this, Ann Ferris does a wonderful job with it. She does that one. She also does one on singing. There's a choir. Last year, she put together a choir for folks who've had dementia plus their caregivers. And they did a big presentation in Anchorage. It's based on they're doing this kind of thing in the lower 48, actually all over the world, with an orchestra and all that good stuff. Anyway, she's got that going too, is the Voices of Alaska, which is called. And so if you want to sing along, it's fun. I've done it. Mm-hmm. You can't hear each other because on Zoom it doesn't work.
Right.
But we have one person who's singing and you can hear them, and there's usually some kind of an instrument like a piano or something, and she puts out the words, and you can sing your heart out in front of your computer, and you can see each other, because you're on Zoom, so you see each other singing in it, and there's motions and things like that. It's a lot of fun. Good. So Memory Cafe is lots of different things. There's usually some kind of presentation or whatever. There's another group, Janice Downing does Art Links, where she every week or every other week, it looks like, she does some kind of art program. And what she does is she has time, she'll send out the what you want, the supplies you're going to have, and what kinds of things she's going to do. And she's very creative. She's wonderful. So Memory Cafe, Art Links, there's one called Brain Games. Debbie Chulik does that one. And then there's another one, Brainworks. Janice and Kim do that one. And this whole Zoom thing has opened that up for folks all over the state, which is so great, because I wasn't doing those. Mm-hmm. I was doing just the webinars, and I was also there's a program called Savvy Caregiver. Now, that's the one, if you're really serious about wanting to find out what's going on with someone with dementia, if you're caring for someone, either hands-on, they're living with you, or they're in another part of the country or another part of the state or living on their own, I would really strongly encourage you, whether you're the actual family member or whether you're a friend, I would encourage you to sign up for one of those classes. It's a 6-week course. It meets for 2 hours for 6 weeks, once a week. And you get a booklet, you get a lot of information, and it's a really great way of getting all the basics that you're going to need to be able to comfortably and successfully assist someone or be a partner to someone who has dementia. Or also support family. So see, that's the other thing that goes on with this. It's not just the person with dementia that is getting isolated. Even prior to this whole pandemic, it was the family caregivers that were suffering as well, because what happens, unfortunately, and it seems to be true not just with somebody with dementia, but when somebody gets really sick, we all kind of like, I don't know if I want to go over and visit. Oh, I don't know what to say. It's so awkward. Oh, they have cancer, or they have, they've had this really bad accident, or they've had a stroke. I don't know what to do. I've got a very dear friend who has a very serious stroke, and she's now lost both her legs. I hate going to visit her. I mean, I love her dearly, and I know I need to go visit, but it's like, it's so painful. It's so painful to see her that way. Yeah. I have to really push myself to go and visit with her. And of course, that's what she needs. That's what her husband needs, is for me to come and visit. Here I am talking about this stuff, and here I am.
Yeah.
I come up with all kinds of excuses why I can't go.
Yeah. So again, you've got assets, and that no doubt is something that's felt by a lot of people. So all of these, I mean, this is an impressive list, But if it's flying by too fast, your website has details laid out pretty well on all of this.
Yes, it does. The list that I was just reading off is actually on our website, and the new one will be on the website. So alzalaska.org.
Okay.
alzalaska.org, or you can call our phone numbers. The Anchorage office is 907-561-3313. or you can contact me, and I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody from Cordova or anywhere. I love talking about this stuff, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's just so important that people get this information. And again, whether you've got somebody in your life right now, or whether you had somebody in your past life, or this is the sort of thing that we all need to know about and get comfortable with thinking about and dealing with.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, too, is I imagine it's as a percentage of population that you see it more often because we've gotten good about keeping other things from finishing us off, learning more about heart disease and other preventable. It's kind of like prostate cancer. That wasn't near as common a thing until men started living a lot longer into their 70s and 80s, and then all of a sudden you see a lot more of it. It's kind of the same thing with some of these dementias, right?
Right, exactly. The other piece of this that we offer, and I don't want to leave this out, is that another one of my coworkers, in fact, all of us could do it, but Amber Smith is in Juneau, and she was the other one that was doing Zoom webinars along with me once a month. She was doing professional ones. So that if you're more of a professional type person, those are the ones that you're going to want to do. And again, she'll do the same webinars type of things. Like right now, we're going through a series. She's got actually someone else who's presenting them, but engaging people living with dementia and the different things that you have to do in order to do that. So she has various different programs that she provides for professional folks. Some of these you can get CEU credit for. We're working on trying to get more of those. I'm going to be working on one about intimacy and sexuality for people with dementia, and for the professional folks. I'm actually going to be presenting that one, I think, in November for families. A little different approach with families than it will be with the ones for professional people. But those are the kinds of things that we look at. And professional folks, if you're wanting to join some of these family things, we encourage you to do that. Any of the webinars are open for any of you, just to know that the focus will be on family caregiving rather than the professional issues and things like that.
Sure.
So, but there are these professional webinars that we have that Amber organizes that come out once a month.
All right. Well, as we kind of come to the end of our time slot here, think about that person that's either nervous that this could develop in themselves or in a family member, and, what do you want those people to know the most as they consider that possibility?
Okay. The first thing is you want to you want to have a diagnosis of some sort. If you're concerned, if there's warning signs, there's so many reasons why a person can have these things, and some of them are preventable. Some of them are correctable. It doesn't mean it can be things like medication. Maybe their medication has gotten messed up and it's causing this stuff, that's causing these kind of issues, the changes in personality, that sort of thing, where they're getting angry at you all the time, or they're getting upset, or those sorts of things. So you want to be sure that you get to a doctor, tell them of your concerns, write the concerns down, have a list of things, go in with your person, make sure that they're getting a good, thorough diagnosis. We have a list. You can contact any of us, and we'll be happy to send that sort of list out. I think it's one of the things I sent to you, JR, about evaluation and diagnosis. And it really takes lots of different visits. It's not one of those 15-minute things. But there's laboratory tests and basically a rule out. What you're wanting the doctors to look at is what else could be causing these kinds of issues. Okay, and then the thing is, if the doctor says, it's looking like it's that, sometimes it'll just be a diagnosis of some form of dementia because they can't differentiate it out right away. Then it's about, you want to get education. You want to get in touch with us. You want to find out what's the best methods for communication. Management. How do we do this thing of managing some of these things that we call challenging, like wandering and aggression and hiding things and paranoia, and some of the things that may develop as the person progresses in the illness. So you really want to find out resources. And there's a whole list of things that you're going to need to do if that is what it looks like. If that's what the doctor says is happening. You don't have to go, it's not the end of the world. I guess that's the main message that I want to give people, is that with the right, as with anything, if you have the right tools, if you know what you're needing to do, you can make it work, and it doesn't have to be a horrible thing. It's different. It's going to be different, but it does not have to be the end of the world. And yes, you're going to have a different kind of relationship with your loved one, and it can be a happy one. It can be joyful if you have the right tools. So don't say, oh my gosh, oh dear, and give up or put your head in.
Okay, well, that's, it's amazing talking about a subject that, has the obvious, stirs up the various emotions that you would expect with concern or worry or panic or whatever, and yet, it's fascinating to talk to you about it because you remain upbeat through the conversation, you remain hopeful, you provide hope, and, it's the kind of attitude I would want to see from somebody if I was scared about this and wanting to learn more, to have an agency and to have people that say, hey, you're not alone in this. It's happened to a lot of people. Here's all this stuff that we have accumulated, all this information, and the more you know, the less mysterious this is going to be.
And it is hard, and it's not to negate that how hard it is, and that's part of what we talk about, is how do you deal with your own emotions. And so that's part of what we look at, is how do you take care of yourself, because that's also very, very important. Okay.
Well, Gay, I hope we have other opportunities to communicate in the future, and I want to thank you very much for having this conversation with us today. I hope it helps some folks.
Yeah, I hope it does too. And any of you that want to get further in touch with me, please do.
Gay Wellman, registered nurse, education specialist with Alzheimer's Resource of Alaska. Her phone number, if you want to reach out to her, is 907-822-5620, 907-822-5620. And the wealth of information and resources she's been talking about can be viewed at alzalaska.org, alzalaska.org. The Town Meeting Talk Show, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. We appreciate that they do that. We wish you all the best. Thank you for listening to the Town Meeting program. And remember, if you missed any of it, look for it soon at youtube.com/Cordova TV, youtube.com/Cordova TV. The rest of your 10 a.m. hour programming is on the way, and we'll see you next time.